All right, 3 o'clock. Chad here. What's going on, my friends? 2-0 Oregon plays at 2-0 Oregon State. Saturday in the Civil War. The Ducks are favored by over 2 touchdowns right now. Kickoff set for 12:30 from Research Stadium. Pregame at 10:30 on your home of the Beavs, 1190 KX. Brendan Slaughter from Beaver's Edge will join the show at 3:20. And then at 5:20, the voice of the Beavers, Mike Parker, will stop by. Auburn quarterback Peyton Thorne says bettors have asked for payment via Venmo after Saturday's loss to California. Colorado safety Shiloh Sanders out 2 to 3 weeks after suffering that broken forearm Saturday at Nebraska. The Buffs are at Colorado State this week. And the 49ers topped the Jets in their opener last night, but the status of Christian McCaffrey for week 2 is still unknown as he deals with ankle and Achilles injuries. San Francisco is at Minnesota on Sunday. Kickoff at 10 on CBS. Niners favored by 6. The Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad's coming at you right now. Oh, by the way, when it comes to my boss, like, I don't want to lie to him, but at the same time, like, if I don't need to say certain things, I'm just going to leave it off the table. I just want my boss to think that I'm always thinking about radio and caring about sports and what's happening. Any of the other nonsense he doesn't need to know about. That would be one of them. And Chad, why were you late to the meeting? I had to go get some Preparation H, man. I was itching a lot.
Oh, God.
Hard to do the show with my buttocks closed.
The Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad, presented by Lazy Boy. What is your strategy for comfort?
There's Debo in motion, jet sweep handoff to Debo, a block and a dive for the goal line, and he's up on the goal line and in. Touchdown, San Francisco, and this one counts. They're not taking it back. Ayuk behind Bell left. They run Mason off the left side, a cutback run. Touchdown, San Francisco.
A little Mason madness on the cutback right off an unbelievable block.
I'm so proud of our kids, the coaches, just everybody. They believed. They believed. And we came here and got it done.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad starts now.
All right, Oregon and Oregon State going to meet up on Saturday. Very weird to have the Civil War in September, but here we are. That kickoff will be at 12:30. Brendan Slaughter from Beaver's Edge will stop by in 20 minutes to share his thoughts, and then the voice of the Beavs, Mike Parker, is going to join us at 5:20. If you want to reach out to the Godfather and find him on social media, he'll be there at Dwight James. You'll find me there at Chad in Rip City, and the telephone number is 503-248-0620. A lot of football to get to today, and we'll start with Monday Night Football, where the 49ers ripped the Jets last night on Monday Night Football. Aaron Rodgers made his return after missing an entire season with that Achilles injury. And we'll get to the 49ers later, but let's start with Aaron Rodgers. Just your overall thoughts on how he looked out there on the field after having an extended period of time off, not being able to play, and going through that extended rehab with the Achilles.
You know, Chad, I thought he looked okay. I didn't think he looked like vintage Aaron Rodgers, but I didn't expect that. This guy has missed an entire season and spent even a lot of that time off in rehab, not being out throwing the football around. So I didn't have high expectations. I think it's going to be a while. I would have played him a little in preseason. In fact, I'm surprised he didn't ask to play a little bit in preseason just to kind of, get everything down a little bit. I thought he was a little rusty, probably not only in throwing the ball, but just recognition, the things he does really well. I don't think you can come back after a year out and be able to recognize, pull a trigger quick, make all those rapid decisions without kind of warming yourself up a little bit to it.
Well, just think about us. We do this for a living where we talk 5 days a week. When I take an extended period of time off, like a week or so, it takes a bit of time for me to get back into a rhythm, when you're trying to speak and talk so fast. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be fine. My only concern would be this. He didn't appear to move particularly well last night, and I'm just wondering what his mobility is going to be like as the season moves along coming off the Achilles tear at his age, 40-plus years old. Now, I have familiarity with this type of situation. Peyton Manning did not play for an entire season after having neck surgeries before the free agent signing in Denver with the Broncos. And if you go back to that year in 2012 when he made the move and came over to Denver, it took him about 5 weeks into the regular season before he really started to sync up, lock in, and play good football. The Broncos started 2-3 that year before they ripped off 11 straight wins to finish out the year. But it took Manning some time. He did not play well early in the season, and I think that was because of all the different things you talked about. Not just adjusting to playing football again after being out for a year, but new franchise, new teammates. You're trying to get used to the system, and then you're also trying to develop confidence in your body that you can trust it to do what you need it to do. So based on what I've seen, I would say we're going to find out more about Aaron Rodgers after we get through the first quarter of the season. I think he's going to be fine. Now, the Jets, here's how I would put
They're
it.
not going to be fine, right?
No, they're a disaster of a franchise. Anyone that believes in the Jets or thinks that somehow they're going to win the division or become a Super Bowl factor is fool's gold. They're not. Even with Aaron Rodgers, even if he plays well, they won't. And that's because their front office and their coaching staff is filled with absolute morons. Just look at what they've got right now. Robert Saleh, I don't think he's a good coach. He certainly hasn't proven it yet in his role with the Jets. He's a defensive guy. Remember yesterday we were giving praise to Coach Bray down at Oregon State because he's in his first coaching job. But what you look for in a head coach is their expertise, their side of the ball. Is it farther ahead than the rest of the team? At Oregon State, the answer is yes. The Beavers' defense through 2 weeks looks sensational, very aggressive, on point, and they're playing assignment football. Props to Coach Bray for making sure that his side of the ball is dialed in. Well, you look at the Jets right now, all we heard about throughout the course of the offseason was their defense is legit. They've got a great pass rush. They're going to be physical against the run. They've got a great secondary. Just on and on and on. Just nothing but praise for the Jets. And then last night they go out there against the 49ers and get absolutely shredded by Brock Purdy and that zone scheme of Kyle Shanahan. No resistance. They couldn't get a stop, and the 49ers scored on not one, not two, but 8 consecutive drives. That's not a championship defense. It's absolute garbage. Not only that, but they got rid of their best pass rusher because they made the deal for Hassan Reddick. Guess who's still not signed and has a deal with the team and is out, holding out? That's Hassan Reddick because the Jets are foolish. They made a deal for a guy knowing what the terms were before they made the trade, and they still haven't got a deal done. And that's a guy that can come in and be an impact player and help them right away. It could have helped them out last night, but because of the Jets and they don't know how to do business properly, this is what happens. And not only that, Nathaniel Hackett, who was an abortion of a head coach in Denver, absolute disaster, clown show through and through. He comes into New York. He proved it last year. He has no clue of how to call a game, how to run an offense. He has no authority, and the only reason why he's got a job is because Aaron Rodgers likes him for some strange reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why Aaron doesn't kick him to the curb.
Don't you think it's because maybe he just leaves Aaron alone and lets Aaron do whatever he wants?
That's true, but most offensive coordinators would leave Aaron alone and let him do what he does because he's Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it's not like he needs a lot of help, but the fact that they still have that guy on staff and didn't go out and get a legitimate offensive coordinator, like, that doesn't tell me you want to win a championship, Godfather. Get a legit offensive coordinator.
That's what happens when you have a defensive guy as your head coach. He probably wouldn't know a good offensive coordinator if he bumped into him in an elevator. You know, I mean, seriously. He doesn't know that side of the ball. What is he going to do? I don't know. All I can tell you is they're a mess from the front office on down, probably from ownership on down, because good ownership, wouldn't allow all this to happen.
No, it's not probably. It is a certainty. Look at their franchise over the last several years. Yeah. They're a laughingstock. They've done nothing. They haven't won jack, and their personnel and hirings continue to be a disaster. They've failed on quarterbacks, Zach Wilson and also Sam Darnold. They can't develop quarterbacks. They don't make good decisions. They can't get trades done. And when they get it done, they can't get the players signed. And they still have Nathaniel Hackett on staff. And Coach Saleh said the things he said the offseason about Aaron Rodgers. They're a rudderless ship, and that's why they're going nowhere. And it's unfortunate for Aaron. I just can't believe that he chose the Jets to play for. I don't know if it's the only team that wanted him. I can't believe that. But why would he choose the Jets? He's too high of a level in terms of what he brings to the table to play for a franchise like that. They're a laughingstock. They're going nowhere, and they're not winning the division. The Dolphins and Bills are laughing at the Jets for being the Jets. That's what they are. They're the Jets. They suck. What a joke.
The only thing I can think about choosing them, Chad, was he's a guy who wanted a big challenge, and the challenge was bringing a winner to the city of New York. Because if you get it done in New York, all of a sudden you're on a different level. a different level even than being elite. You're all of a sudden bigger than that even. I don't know. I don't know why he would pick him either. What did he think was going to happen there? Something different?
Yeah, he's not a dumb guy. He probably should have seen that one coming. I thought the 49ers last night, here's a question for you. Why'd they give Christian McCaffrey so much money when Kyle Shanahan, just like his father Mike, can place any back in the backfield and he goes out there and performs? Jordan Mason was awesome last night with 147 yards, had a touchdown, average over 5 yards a carry. He was dynamite.
Well, all those running backs who are worried about the compression of salaries of other running backs, they didn't like that game at all because it made it look like, you know what, if you do things right, you don't need to pay a running back. You just get whatever's available, throw a second stringer out there, and if you block it right, if everything goes right, you got a good scheme, 140 yards.
Yeah, the problem is most coaches can't scheme it up like Kyle Shanahan.
Of course. Yeah.
That zone scheme is terrific, and Mike was the same way, whether it was Terrell Davis, who was dynamite, or it was Mike Anderson, or it was Orlandis Gary, or it was Tatum Bell. Just take your pick. It was back after back after back that was able to go out and get 1,000 yards, and we saw him scheme it up last night. I thought Brock Purdy, nothing spectacular, just him putting the ball in the right spot into the hands of his playmakers so they could get the job done. But the 49ers came out. Here's the difference between these two franchises. The 49ers, like the Jets, nothing but praise and talk about a Super Bowl this year. They showed up and looked the part. They were sound on both sides of the football. Guys were in the right place, and Brock Purdy was getting the job done, and they ran the football and had balance, and their defense was highly effective. The Jets come out, look lost, and apparently have no plan anywhere aside from the fact that Aaron Rodgers is going to play football for them. What a joke. It was a joke, but the 49ers were buttoned up and tight. They look good.
Yeah, they did. A lot of talk, too, prior to the season of they're going to start going down a little bit. You got McCaffrey starting the season on the injured list, whatever. It may not be as good this year. Well, they look pretty good. All I can say is last night they looked pretty good.
Yeah, they're going to be fine this year. The concern will be after they pay Brock Purdy many millions of dollars to be the quarterback moving into the future. How are they going to surround him with the talent needed to be able to go out there and get the job done? But this year, it's Super Bowl or bust. When you've got the type of players that they do and the coaches that they have one focus. That's winning a championship. Anything short of that will be a major disappointment, and it should be with that roster and the players that they have. But I love their skill position players. Deebo Samuel's are great. Jordan was terrific at running back last night. McCaffrey will come back. He's still unknown for week 2 against Minnesota. They'll need him at some point because he's such a playmaker. Not so much the running, which he's really good at, but it's the receiving. He's a great safety valve for the quarterback because he knows where to get to, and he's got those football smarts to find the right spot and make plays.
Yeah, and you got a running back catching the ball, so yards after catch are even better with him catching the ball.
Yeah, he's a terrific football player. Coming from a football family, loved his dad, and now his son is getting it done with the 49ers. So that's where we're at. The Jets are a joke, and the 49ers look every bit the part, get the win 32-19. And really, the final score, it wasn't even that close.
I agree.
That was dominance.
How many possessions in a row did they score?
8.
That's all? Just 8?
Just 8. 8 straight.
Yeah,
but the Jets have a great defense.
But, you know, it's funny,
Garbage.
too. You're talking about a professional coach. All those times, they took the field goal. You didn't see him taking chances on 4th and 1 or 4th and 2 or anything. Take the points, move on. We know we're going to get down there again. I just like that approach. I think that's sound, and I think he knows exactly what he's doing.
And the Jets don't.
Yeah.
The Jets are like the Clippers. No matter what anyone says or what players they bring in, they're not going to win a championship in my lifetime.
No matter who owns them even, right?
It doesn't matter.
Steve Ballmer's not going to turn that thing around.
His red face is not going to usher in a championship. It will bring in a lot more toilets, though, which is good. I don't know if the Jets have as many toilets as Steve Ballmer, but
nobody does. He's a professional.
All right. What would a Beavers win look like on Saturday against Oregon? We'll ask that to Brendan Slaughter, Beavers Edge. He'll join us next. The Rip City Drive is bringing the show to the Haven Spa Pool and Hearth in Clackamas Friday, September 27th from 3 to 6. Join Dwight and Chad as they broadcast live and collect new and gently used sports balls for the Boys and Girls Club of the Portland metro area. Get more details on the events page at ripcityradio.com. All right, joining us once again to talk some Oregon State football as we get ready for the Civil War is Brendan Slaughter from Beaver's Edge. He is back. Hey, Brendan, good afternoon. It's great to have you back on the show, my friend. Isn't this a bit bizarre getting ready for the Civil War in September?
Oh, it's so weird. Appreciate you guys having me on. I hope you guys are doing well. But yeah, it is so weird. It has been so ingrained in my brain just from not even so much a fan, but I've been doing this, covering in media and doing so much with that Oregon State for like 10 years now, where it's like every year I remember the routine. It's, you go do Thanksgiving, you come back, sometimes Civil War's on a Friday, Saturday. It's always the end of the year. It's kind of like the finish line, so to speak. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a weird feeling, and we were talking about it a little bit this morning on Rip City Mornings. Just the fact that it's this early. There've been some games that were, I think, in October we determined way back in the day, but never this early.
All right, the Beavers have been running the ball very well. How many rushing yards is it going to take for them to beat the Ducks Saturday?
Yeah, I think it's going to take probably 150, 200. Yards, I don't know matter quite as much as like the control of the game. I mean, we've kind of seen these first 2 weeks, Dwight, that for Oregon State to win, they need to control the clock. And, I think in the case of San Diego State, like it was 41-18 time of possession domination. And that's your recipe, right? For beating a team that, is potentially more talented than you are in some areas. And, I think you look back to a couple years ago, obviously the game script was a bit unique and how they ran the ball, not necessarily by wanting to, but just like, hey, we need to run. And they got that win. So I think there's going to be some shades of that as far as like game plan goes. There'll be some new wrinkles, obviously, because it's a whole new offense. But this game has far more intrigue, fellas, than it did just a couple weeks ago.
Hey, Brendan, what are your thoughts on the offensive lines played through 2 games?
It's been terrific. I chuckle a little bit because I see, Shedeur Sanders over at Colorado once again kind of throwing his offensive lineman under the bus. And there are a couple offensive linemen that came from Colorado here to Oregon State. And Giovanni McCoy hasn't really been touched in 2 games. So definitely, you add in a couple transfers from Colorado who, were multi-year starters. They kind of buoy the line along with Josh Gray, and then you add in a couple other pieces. That unit's been solid, and you've got to give credit to Kyle Devan, obviously, for what he's done in his first year as head coach, or as offensive line coach, excuse me. But then going back even further, I think it speaks volumes to the talent that Jim Mahalchik had in that room. I mean, for lack of better terms, they couldn't take everybody to Michigan State with them, and they left some solid players there. He recruited really well.
I'm curious what you think about this. Are they going to need more from McCoy this weekend? Are they going to need to throw the ball more?
I think you're just going to need more from him in general, Dwight. I mean, you look at, what we've seen. He hasn't we've seen the elements of the spread offense with Ryan Gunderson, right? We've seen the run so heavily forced. One thing we haven't seen is Giovanni McCoy pulling that ball on the zone read. Are they saving that for the Oregon weekend? We haven't really seen him take off and run and add, we've seen the mobility, right, and extending plays, but not necessarily like, hey, here's a design quarterback run kind of a thing. So I think that's something to keep an eye on, as far as his legs. But yes, I think 100% he's going to have to play the game of his career probably to get Oregon State over the hump, because even though Oregon has been vulnerable these first 2 weeks, and what was a near 30-point spread a couple weeks ago is now down to, I think, 16. So there's definitely, some more thought in the game being close. But no, I mean, Oregon State and Giovanni McCoy, they're going to need to play a really great game to have a shot to pull off the upset.
We're talking with Brendan Slaughter from Beaver's Edge here on the Rip City Drive, getting ready for Oregon and Oregon State on Saturday. Has the school got any plans in place to limit the amount of Duck fans that will show up at Reser?
That's a good question. I haven't heard anything specific, but, at Reser now, it seems like I think back to a couple years ago, Chad, when USC and Caleb Williams came to town, and USC obviously brought their band, and they put USC's band up in the upper left corner of the far side of Reser Stadium, to where you couldn't even hear USC's band by the time the game got going. So, I think Duck fans will kind of trickle in. They might even, buy some Beaver tickets and be kind of intermixed into Beaver sections. But no, I think they're going to do a pretty good job of making it a big-time home atmosphere. And when you break it down in the sense of like, it usually, like I said earlier, it usually builds to having the biggest game of the year at Reese or towards the end or one of the end games. It's a little weird to have the biggest game of the year be just the second home game, if that makes sense.
What surprised you the most, Brandon, from what you've seen from the Beavers so far this year?
I think just taking care of business, for lack of better terms, and why that sounds a little, cliche, going into the year, there was a, best case scenario, there was a worst case scenario, and we just didn't know how Oregon State would look with a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, so many new pieces on both sides of the ball. And, you know, you all have seen what can happen to Oregon State in years where things just don't click and the bottom can kind of fall out a little bit. And I think there was so much talent left, and they did a good job in the transfer portal that the bottom wasn't going to fall out. But there were plenty of folks who are like, well, worst case scenario, maybe Oregon State goes 4-8, 5-7. Maybe a game like San Diego State's a game that they drop. It's on the road. It's early. So just to see that they have won both games, it was a little closer than expected. It was 7-0 for the longest time in the San Diego State game. So not like it was a comfortable victory until the end. But I think just so far seeing what you've seen is like a little bit of growth in each week. The defense still looks like a strength. The offense will probably get better as these weeks go along. So, I mean, so far just, not having any crazy, Idaho State upsets, dropping a game you should win against a bad San Diego State team. So, and we've seen in the past where Oregon State can drop a game they're not supposed to. So I think just taking care of business and continuing to get better each week so far has been what's been impressive.
Hey, Brendan, biggest injury concerns getting ready for Oregon?
Yeah, there's a couple. Obviously, we haven't seen Trent Walker in the receiving corps has been great, and he's definitely a number one option. But the true number one guy in that room, in my mind, is going to be Darius Clemens, who came over from Michigan and just a highly, highly touted recruit originally out of Westview, just up above us here. And, he's been dealing with a minor injury these first couple weeks. The thought is that he'll get back for Oregon, but we're still not quite sure there. It's kind of going to be a game time decision. He would be a huge swoon to Giovanni McCoy, that passing game. Obviously comes in with a couple years experience, played on the national championship squad last year. So that would just be a big talent piece to have. And then a couple, they might be down a guy or two on the offensive line. But again, as I said earlier, that room is pretty deep. We've seen them go 8-9 deep first 2 weeks. So I think, you're pretty comfortable there. And then on the flip side, you had a couple guys that were dinged up. You had Noble Thomas, who was your starting nickelback. He did not play against San Diego State. To be determined on him, probably also a game-time decision. And then starting outside linebacker, Olu Omotosho, he was, really, really good for Oregon State in like the, 10 snaps that he played against Idaho State in week 1 before he went down with a minor ding, wasn't able to get back against San Diego State. So if they can get some of those kind of high-end pieces, like I mentioned, Clemens and Olu, I think that would be just even a better chance for them to be able to, pull this one off potentially on Saturday.
Okay, Brendan, now let's just take a look at this game. For Oregon State to pull off what would be a really monumental upset, I would say, what would that look like?
It's interesting because there is so much more pressure on Oregon in this game than Oregon State. And I think in my years of covering and following the games, maybe it's the time of the year and everything else, it's never been that way. Like maybe it was the fact that Beaver fans kind of safeguarded themselves, and in the offseason seeing everything that Oregon did with, NIL and bringing in all these star players, I think a lot of Beaver fans were like, yeah, that's probably going to be a loss. And I think, going into the season, when you looked at the 30-point spread that it originally was and the team we thought Oregon will be, granted, they're 2-0, they still could be that team, but we'll see. I think now there's just like a sense of like optimism on Oregon State's side. Like, hey, this is, kind of house money. We can go do this. We've beat Oregon the last 2 times they've come to Reeser. And, they've looked vulnerable against Idaho and Boise State. And then on Oregon's side, you played 2 games at home that were extremely close. Now you take your first road game of the year. Granted, it is just up the road, but still a road game nonetheless. And to a place where Oregon had one of their most monumental collapses probably in the last 10 years, 2 years ago. So I think, every year is different and all those things, but I think there'll be a lot of motivation for Oregon State, not only for the, you know, leaving behind and the Pac-2 and all. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of emotion from Oregon State, and it's going to be, you know, kind of a let's go out and do our thing and kind of see what happens. Compared to the Oregon side, which I think this is a must win and a game you absolutely can't drop, and that adds a lot of pressure to that sideline.
Would you put your hard-earned money on Oregon State plus 16?
I'd take the spread on that. I
Mhm.
would. I'm not ballsy enough to take the money line, Chad, but I think they would cover a 16.5 spread. I believe it was 14 on Monday, and then it moved back up to 16.5. I'm confident they would get within that range. And if I were to guess right now, I probably got the Ducks by about 10 in this game, but it is a lot closer than it was a couple weeks ago. And it's at Reser. Oregon State's lost there twice in 3 years. Things happen in rivalry games. It's early, and this is going to be an interesting game. I really think it has the potential to be a good one.
So you are more confident after seeing the Ducks and the way they look through 2 weeks?
Oh, definitely. I mean, again, just concerned Beaver supporter over here, and all due respect, like with the offseason, Chad, you looked at all the guys they brought in. I thought this was the best Oregon team I had ever seen in my lifetime on paper. So I was, and again, they still could be. They're still 2-0. They still could do a whole bunch of things this year. But I think we're seeing that hasn't quite meshed together as quickly as they thought. And in this case, it's probably a benefit for Oregon State to play Oregon early in the year than later in the year, because with the talent Oregon has, I think they'll be a darn good team by the time the season starts to get towards its closing spots.
All right. Brendan Slaughter, who's part of Rip City Mornings with Justin Myers, also from Beaver's Edge, getting ready for the big game this weekend, Civil War. Kickoff at 12:30, pregame at 10:30 on your home of the Beavs, 1190 KX. Hey, Brendan, as always, my man, we appreciate the time. Thanks for breaking it down. Enjoy the week of preparation and the big game coming up in September.
Appreciate you guys. Have a good show, and we'll talk soon.
There you go. There's Brendan Slaughter. Very level-headed approach by him.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah. For a guy working for Beaver's Edge, who is a Beaver, he's a Beaver. But I think actually a pretty unbiased look at that game.
I think they probably kept Olu out purposely, getting ready for Oregon.
I would agree.
Now, we're going to be okay against San Diego State. Just we want you to 100% for that game because we're going to need you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what gives me hope for Oregon State. Like, if you're watching the film, let's just say that Oregon comes out, they don't get their left tackle back, and they're still shuffling guys around up front. The Beavers' defense is good enough to create some havoc as well. And, I mean, if you're an Oregon State player, you look at the film, I mean, you see opportunities where you can go out there and make plays against a team right now that is struggling. It's the perfect time. Like, for the Beavs, right now is the perfect time to play Oregon.
Yeah, well, Brendan said it. You know, this is one year we're playing them in the third game of the season is a lot better than waiting until the end, probably.
Yeah, and usually in most cases for good football teams, catching them early is a problem because most teams are healthy.
Right.
You get towards the end of the year, guys are beat up. They're physically tired. They've gone through the grind of the schedule. But right now, Oregon, they're searching for their identity, and they don't have balance on offense. And if Dylan Gabriel's got to drop back and throw it 40 to 50 times on Saturday, that's not a good number for Oregon. They need that balance on offense. It's really bizarre to watch a Duck offense that we've seen over the last several years, rush the ball for less than 100 yards or struggle to get over the century mark and not have the type of balance. What's made Oregon so tough over the years has been, they'll come out and drop, 550, 600 yards of total offense, half running, half passing. So you don't know which way they're going to go. But right now, when they can't run, everything else on the offense bogs down. And then the defense doesn't respect the run, so they play you differently based on what you're doing or can't do. It's amazing.
Yeah, and they're not getting, so far in 2 games, chunk plays like they usually get a lot of chunk plays. The only ones they've gotten so far have been off their special teams. You got a big punt return for a touchdown and a big kickoff return for a touchdown in the same game. You better win that game.
Yeah, they were fortunate. It's not often you get 2 special teams touchdowns, but they got the job done. Special teams is a major part of the game. They got it done, but they're going to need more in this game, especially a road game, first road game for the offensive line. If you're shuffling around your guards and your center and you don't have your left tackle, could be an issue for Oregon. So we'll see how things continue to shake out, but the atmosphere will be good. It's just bizarre to be talking Oregon State in September. It feels weird. Why are we talking about this game right now?
No, I've usually had my Thanksgiving Day turkey by the time this game is played. You know?
There are certain games that should be talked about during certain times of the year.
Yeah.
Oregon and Oregon State should not be discussed in September. It's that goodie that's left for the end of the year.
Well, at least they're playing. And I know a lot of fans really of both teams are happy about that. More Oregon State than Oregon, I'm sure.
Wow.
Because this isn't one of those games the Ducks, man, they got a lot to lose and really not that much to gain out of winning this game.
Yeah, I agree with that. It is good because, as I mentioned yesterday, the Oklahoma State game, Bedlam, it's done.
Yeah.
They're not doing it anymore. And, my dad's really frustrated by it. That's an entire state that every year, and I grew up in the state, it's no different than here. You talk about that game. You have a divided household. You have Oklahoma State fans, Oklahoma fans. It's the biggest game of the year in the state. And now they don't have it anymore. And that's a darn shame.
Yeah. It's also the week of the Apple Cup, too. So at least those two rivalries are continuing for at least this year and next.
All right, one quick side note. You've been talking about this ever since gambling became legalized and given to the states for them to decide. So you've got so many more people right now getting action down on sporting events.
A lot more.
Auburn's quarterback Peyton Thorne says that he's been getting DMs and messages from people around the country asking for money via Venmo after their latest loss to Cal.
No.
Yeah.
That's how can people do that? I mean, even as a joke.
I don't think some people are joking, though. I think they're legitimately pissed that Auburn got upset by Cal.
Yeah.
A lot of these people, what they'll do is they'll take certain teams on the money line just to win the game, right? Because they've got some type of parlay put together. And then all of a sudden your parlay falls apart because Cal goes in and upsets Auburn. And then fans get really upset because their money went down the drain. So they hit up the quarterback like, hey, man, you suck. You owe me money.
Yeah. Instead of
Venmo me.
recognizing they made a stupid bet. Or maybe they shouldn't even be gambling.
Well, there's a lot of things that people shouldn't be doing in the world, but they're going to keep doing it, Godfather.
That's for sure.
But you mentioned this the other day, too. Now that these college players are being paid exorbitant amounts of money to play football or basketball, and the fact that people are gambling on these events, the expectations and the level of accountability is going to skyrocket.
No question, Chad. When I started covering college football at the newspaper, it was an unwritten rule. You don't criticize college kids playing any sport. You don't go after them. You don't blame them. You just keep that part of it out. Now they're like pros.
For years, they didn't even announce the number of the player that was committed the offensive holding penalty.
Absolutely. For a long time they did.
Because they didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings.
Well, yeah. Well, they were amateurs. They weren't getting paid. They were just going out and playing in between classes,
And they ain't amateurs anymore, are they?
No.
All right, Rip City Drive. We're going to talk with Mike Parker, the great voice of the Beavs. He's going to join us coming up at 5:20. When we come back, they've announced the Super Bowl halftime show. One thing for certain, they are not targeting my segment of the population for their halftime show. And also more gambling news. Jordan Mason, 49ers running back, may have said too much, Godfather.
Yeah, he might have screwed up.
All right, Godfather, the halftime show for the Super Bowl has been announced. It's going to be Kendrick Lamar. What are your thoughts on the selection?
A bit surprised because they've gone with rappers quite frequently lately, and I kind of thought they might depart this year. And then actually, I think it's in New Orleans this year, and that's why a lot of people are surprised that Lil Wayne isn't the guy because he's a New Orleans guy. And the betting odds, I think, were on him rather than Kendrick Lamar. I kind of like his stuff. I've listened to his stuff since he started, really. He kind of caught my ear one time. And I thought he had a good voice. He's not just a rapper. He can sing a little bit. He's okay.
Well, why do some people not think he's the right selection?
Because I thought Lil Wayne would go because it's in New Orleans and he's a New Orleans guy. And he's hot right now. But so is Kendrick Lamar. He's, I think he's got a song with Beyonce out now.
Well, it really doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, that's what I figured. You'll be in the kitchen taking care of the refreshments at that point, right?
They stopped targeting me for the halftime show many, many years ago. They're after hip-hop and rap artists or the Taylor Swift types, and it's just not the type of music I listen to. I don't expect them to program the Super Bowl halftime show for me. They're looking for – the NFL is really smart when it comes to marketing their product and the entertainment side of their product to the ancillary fans, the housewives, the different people, the women who are starting to get on board with the NFL. They do a good job of picking performers that will come in and appeal to a wider audience, and that's just not where I'm at. I would prefer they put a rock and roll band in there or somebody from the 70s, one of these older bands, and that's just not going to hit with the majority of people out there. It might hit better than what they think it would, but they're going to want to go with the latest and greatest star because they're the NFL, and that's what they're about. They're about big names and big opportunities, and they want to appeal to the masses out there and also have a way to connect with the younger demographic. They've got me hook, line, and sinker no matter what they do.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch NFL games until I die. I'm not going to stop watching NFL. I'll continue to consume it. I'll be a P1 NFL fan, and that's the way it's always going to be. And they know that. So they're going to appeal to the performers who are going to bring in those ancillary fans. And, even though it's not my cup of tea, I understand why they do it, and I think it's smart. But Kendrick Lamar or Lil Wayne, that's just not my thing. I'm not into, the rap or the hip-hop or the country that they bring in. Sometimes they bring in country stars. I'm not down.
Yeah.
But I don't expect them to roll out a yacht rock legend from the late 70s or early 80s either,
Well, I covered one in New Orleans once, and I was very impressed with the halftime show. It was before they decided to go with one big name, and they were going with 2 or 3 or 4 different acts. And I don't remember the whole thing. I know for sure, though, that they had ZZ Top and Blues Brothers. I think they might have even had James Brown. I'm trying to remember who else. It could have been James Brown or B.B. King. I can't recall, but it was a great halftime show, in my opinion. That one was aimed – they just said, hey, Dwight, who could we get? And I said, yeah, get those guys.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay. I still think my favorite halftime show was the Cowboys-Bills Super Bowl back in January of 93 in Pasadena. Michael Jackson. He was
good.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Sensational. All right. One other note. I wanted to ask you about this because I'm not quite sure why people are concerned about this. What did Jordan Mason say in regards to McCaffrey's status that was problematic? Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, whoever the interviewer was, I don't remember. She asked him, when did you know you were going to be starting? And he stumbled around it a little bit like he didn't remember, but he probably remembered. And he ended up saying Friday, which really made a big impact on people betting the game because it wasn't really announced until game day, Sunday, that McCaffrey wasn't going to play. So, and then later in the press conference, the coach said, I didn't tell him that. He might have heard it from somebody else, or he might have just heard, you better be ready because you're going to play some because we don't think McCaffrey can go all the way. He hedged it a little bit, but there's a lot of people saying this exactly what we worried about injuries not being reported, and there's large sums of money being bet on these games.
Interesting. We also saw this, too, where Matt Downs put out a tweet with a picture of his wager, and he got a note back from Bet365.
Oh, yeah.
And it says, "We are contacting you regarding bet ID." He's got the number blacked out. Placed at the odds of -110 on Jordan Mason, over 13.5 player rushing yards, Jets at the 49ers. We have identified that this selection was placed at incorrect odds, and as such, in accordance with our rules, will be settled at the revised odds of -5,000. So what happens is he puts in a bet at 13.5 over on the rushing yards. Mason shreds it. Bet365 is upset because they didn't know that Mason was going to start. He started, and therefore they feel like the odds they set were poor, and they decided to change the bet.
And they just have the right to just change it, right?
Yeah.
Even though you made a legitimate – I mean, that's a deal with them. It's like a contract almost.
Yeah.
I mean, if you lose, you got to pay them.
Don't be mad at me because you put out a soft number that I took advantage of.
That's right.
That's on the book. But as he pointed out, it's truly us versus the books. Wild.
Yeah.
But that's ridiculous. But it's actually good that this kind of stuff comes out because what you're going to need at some level is there's going to have to be some oversight on the books and how they deal with people. Where there's a set standard where you know going in what you're going to get and what the result's going to be. And to make sure people who are placing bets are being treated fairly. Because some of these books, what they'll do, if you win a few bets in a row, these online casinos, they'll place limits on you on how much you can bet because they might view you as a potential sharp. It's
But
ridiculous.
it seems like, Chad, if they're going to make this legal, then there probably should be some oversight somewhere.
A general standard because it's not like just a few people are wagering on games now. It's all over the place. It's rampant.
Yeah.
So there's going to have to be some oversight on some level to make sure that people are being treated fairly and not taken advantage of. All right, we'll keep things rolling here on the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad. When we come back, we're getting closer to our favorite time of the day, and that's an update on Jim Harbaugh. And we got a quick stat on Joe Burrow, which is amazing, and then Peyton Manning getting off during the Manning cast. You got the Rip City Drive. All right, 4 o'clock chat here. 2-0 Oregon will play a 2-0 Oregon State Saturday in the Civil War. The Ducks are favored by 2 touchdowns. Kickoff at 12:30 from Reeser. The pregame at 10:30. It's on your home of the Beavs, 1190 KEX. The voice of your Oregon State Beavers, Mike Parker, is going to join the show coming up at 5:20. Auburn quarterback Peyton Thorne says bettors have asked for payment via Venmo after Saturday's loss to California. Colorado safety Shiloh Sanders out 2 to 3 weeks after suffering that broken forearm in Saturday's loss to Nebraska. The Buffs are at Colorado State this week, and the 49ers over the Jets last night, but the status for Christian McCaffrey for week 2 is still unknown. He's dealing with ankle and Achilles injuries. San Francisco's at Minnesota. Kickoff at 10 on CBS. The Niners are a 6-point favorite. Good news, more of the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad's coming up right now. Animal. No mo, no mo. I love this song. All right, this reminded me of a discussion we had on the show last week. I figured out what my favorite Phil Collins song is of all time.
Okay.
I can't believe it didn't pop in my mind when we were talking about it, but he's got so many. And then I was cruising around the other day, and the song came on. I was like, well, this is the one. There's no question that this right here is my number one Phil Collins song, and it will be for the rest of my life. Easy Lover, a song that he wrote and performed with Philip Bailey of Earth, Wind, and Fire. What I love about this song is it came out in the early 80s, and yet it sounds like it could have been made yesterday. It's freaking awesome. And the two of those guys singing together is delicious. You like this song, Godfather?
Yeah. I like everything he does.
Come on, give me some volume. Don't tease me, Shacker.
I don't think he ever did a bad song, did he? I haven't heard it. I mean, I like some better than others, obviously, but this stuff's always good.
And I'm just trying to make you see. Yeah, this is good. Are you down with this song, Shacker?
Yeah, I would call it my second favorite Phil Collins song.
And what's your number one?
Can I
In the
play-
air tonight?
No, can I play it?
Yeah, go ahead. This is right up. This is in my top 5. I love the drums in this song. This was great in concert, too.
There's like guitars that talk to each other.
Yeah, this is a great song.
Who's Billy?
I don't know who Billy is. This song sounded dope in concert. All right, there you go. So for the 1 or 2 people out there that really gave a rat's ass what my favorite Phil Collins song is, you know now, Easy Lover.
I would go for In the Air tonight.
That's a great song. That's a great song. And the drums in this song, he did it in some weird studio, like in a room that wasn't like a soundproof room, but it had like these concrete walls or bricks or whatever.
I think I read about that, yeah.
So he got a sound out of that room for this song, and they went with the demo on it because it was hard to replicate the sound.
Yeah.
That's how unique it is. And that's what geniuses do. They just fall into greatness and don't even know what's going on. That's Phil Collins.
Skip ahead to when he hits the drums here.
Someone put together like a 20-hour loop of just the drum fill
Really?
from this song because it's the
I don't think
greatest
I've heard
drum fill
that.
of all time.
Yeah.
The greatest drum fill in the history of drum fills is this song right here. And that's considered by most experts. And, of course, you, being a contrarian, will come up with some ass song that's not this song and be like, I think this drum fill is better, but this is the one.
Moby Dick, Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, that's good. All right, there you go. I feel like a better man now after getting that Phil Collins out of the way.
Good.
Thank you, Michael
Phil
Shacker.
Collins trifecta.
It's so great. You sent me that video the other day of the live version of this.
Oh, gosh. Were you sitting on the edge of the stage singing?
Yeah, and then he walks up to the drums right before the
Times it
drum fill.
perfectly.
And he knows exactly, everyone there knows exactly what's coming. It's like, give it to me.
He arrives at the drums just at the right time, grab the sticks, and boom, 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 boom.
I
Gosh,
got robbed when I saw him in concert because Phil was physically broken down to a degree. So he stood at the mic and sang the song, which was great, but his son was on the drums, which I was cool with. We
His
all
son
knew what was
did.
coming. It was great to look around the arena. Everyone was going air drums right at the right time. Never seen anything like that because that's what people know the song for. They're like, give it to me, and then they gave it to us, and it was great. All right, we got to talk a little football here. Peyton Manning and the Manning cast. By the way, I love the Manning cast, Godfather, but with Bill Belichick, it's even better. They
Not
made
surprising.
something that was great even better by adding Bill Belichick. And we talked about this months ago, how Belichick was going to go on some wild media tour to help
Sure.
kind of rebuild his public image because he was known as kind of a wet blanket or a curmudgeon or kind of a bitterman or a guy that was never happy, someone that might walk by the owner in the hallway and not say a word to him,
Yeah.
someone that was difficult to deal with the media, didn't want to answer questions. We're on to Cincinnati, the whole shebang, right? So what do? You go out on a media tour to repair your image, which he's doing quite successfully right now. We see him all over the place. He's on the Manning cast. He's here. He's there. He's everywhere. And more importantly, he's engaging. Hearing this guy
He's
talk
good.
about football and break it down, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, he can communicate at a high level, and he is really good.
And he has a bit of a sense of humor, too, which is you actually see him laugh once in a while.
And he's not afraid to just tell it how it is or how he sees it, right?
Yeah.
Which is nice. It's kind of refreshing. We need more of people like that in the media for crying out loud.
Yep.
And Peyton Manning apparently doesn't have a problem calling it how it is either after we saw Brandon Ayuk drop a beautifully thrown ball from Brock Purdy last night in the end zone.
Man to man, Jennings. Oh, he got one to throw.
Ayuk, he's a little rusty, Pate. You know, he's missed all training camp.
Hey, get signed, get in training camp. There's a reason for training camp. You need it. We need the reps.
13 seconds.
Get those contracts done earlier so we can get in training camp. We don't drop balls on opening night.
I love that.
That's so good. It was funny because Peyton's going off, and then Belichick is in one of the screens just staring at the TV trying to figure out what's going on. And Peyton's just unloading. But that's Peyton right there. And it's hard to argue with that because Ayuk is a great player, but there's no doubt that he's got to shake off a little bit of rust, too,
Sure.
after not really being a full participant throughout the course of the preseason and camp.
Yeah.
That's going to happen.
And that's the kind of catch. It's, you know, if a guy makes that catch in a college game, it's like, wow, great catch. In the NFL, he makes that catch 99 times out of 100, I would say.
Now, I will say this. It's always easy for the quarterback that makes more money than anybody else on the team to talk about how they got to get the contract signed and get your butt into camp or whatever. It's like,
Right.
hey, quarterback, please shut your mouth. You're taken care of because you're a franchise guy. You know you're going to get endless amounts of cash, and you're probably going to get guaranteed money too.
Yeah.
But I, on the other hand, have to fight, scratch, and claw for every dollar I'm going to get. So it's a little bit weird to hear a quarterback talking about getting contracts signed because quarterbacks are always taken care of. But that's Peyton Manning. That's detail. He's like, hey, if you would have been in camp and going through practice and all the drills and the work, you wouldn't have dropped that ball. I threw a perfect ball, and yet you dropped it because you weren't ready in time for the regular season. That's what's going through his mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was some old quarterback anger coming out there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been his guy dropping the ball. That's kind of the way it sounded, you know.
But that's the difference from being a pro and being in high school or whatever. When you're paid big money and you're a high-level athlete and the quarterback puts the ball on the money, you got to catch it.
Yeah.
There aren't too many drops that you get. You've got to catch the ball. There are certain plays that have to be made. I saw Will Levis throw a pick this weekend that he should probably be benched for the rest of his life. Like, there's certain things on the pro level that you can't get away with doing too often or they're going to have issue because the expectations are skyrocketing. And if you're Brandon Ayuk and you negotiate this new deal and you are a self-admitted hassle for the team, you don't want to be dropping beautifully thrown balls by Brock Purdy in the end zone.
Yeah, it was a pretty pass. Gosh, it reminds me of Jerry Glanville. NFL stands for not for long if you keep that up. And he was saying it to a referee.
It's true, though.
Yeah.
It's true. Pro sports it's unforgiving.
Yeah.
When you get paid, you're expected to produce. And if you
Oh,
don't,
it's
there's going to be big-time issues.
Terrible.
Especially when a play is executed perfectly and someone drops the ball.
Yeah.
Or running backs don't know how to hold on to the football. The Broncos got a rookie, that guy from Notre Dame, Audrey Estime, who the story was put out there over the weekend. He's got a picture up in his locker, right, of Barry Sanders and Jerome Bettis. And Estime's a big, bouldering running back. He's a powerful guy. He's got the X through, the Ghostbusters X through Barry Sanders, and he's got Jerome Bettis right there.
Oh.
And what it's all about is knowing who you are and what type of football player you want to be.
Yeah.
He's not saying that he's got an issue with Barry Sanders. He's saying, I'm not a dancer. I'm a guy that's going to lower the shoulder pads and bull over guys, right? Well, in the game against Seattle, his first run, he ripped off a big run. He leaps and jumps up in the air, gets blasted, and fumbles the football.
Yeah.
Fortunately for his ass, the Broncos recovered the fumble. But even after the game, Sean Payton said, he talked about the picture, talked about Barry, talked about Jerome Bettis, and he goes, maybe I missed it, but I don't recall Jerome Bettis leaping up in the air and leaving his feet. It's like, hey, rookie, remember who you are. You're not jumping up in the air. You're not trying to hurdle over guys when you're trying to be a Jerome Bettis type, right? That's not your game.
Mm-hmm.
And usually in the NFL, leaving your feet is not a good idea. Keep your feet on the ground, keep your shoulder pads low, and hold on to the football. Because when you leap up in the air, you open yourself up to a lot more physical contact from guys who are coming in like missiles.
Yeah, and landings that aren't really safe either.
No, you get blasted. You could land on your dome. We see guys get flipped over. You'll fumble the football because you're more exposed.
You get flipped a lot. You see that a lot. It land on your neck and your head.
And look, I know the Seahawks didn't play a perfect game, but I got to give them credit. Mike McDonald had that defense flying around. They were aggressive and hitting hard.
And they weren't missing tackles, man.
No.
They had you lined up. They were going to get you.
But how do they do it and some teams can't? Because in the NFL, not just NFL, but college, both levels now, the practice guidelines in terms of what you can do and can't do with pads, physical contact. It's not like it was in the old days, right? So these teams are not getting time to really tackle. And it's hard. So you open up the season and you see a lot of missed tackles usually, but the Seahawks were sure-handed. In fact, who was I listening to the other day? It may have been, it was Terrell Davis. And he was talking about the Broncos running game and how it basically sucked balls against the Seahawks, right? But he was talking about, camp, that back when he was playing with Mike Shanahan, the rules were different in terms of what you could do with pads and practice and so forth. And he said that they would practice run after run after run with pads on, being physical, so you could learn how to develop that mentality throughout the course of a ball game. But now you go through camp and you really don't practice that, so it takes time through many, many games to be able to develop that type of identity and the type of physical running attack that you need to get downhill and get after it.
It was the same way in college, Chad. They used to hit. They were in full pads most of the week, and they would hit during the week. And then John McKay came along at USC, and they practiced a lot without pads, and that became a thing. And now you're recruiting against teams that, we only wear, pads once a week or something. And so everybody gets a little softer. I don't see how you can get hit in a game and keep the ball without practicing that.
No.
That's something you got to practice.
No, it's so true. Well, heck, as you pointed out not too long ago, back in the day, Woody Hayes and the rest of the freaks, no water today.
Water. Hey, high school coaches, no water. Rinse your mouth out. That's what you used to hear. No water. Don't drink it.
Hey, Coach, I might be dehydrated. So what? Shake it off.
Yeah.
Come on, sissy. Those guys were crazy back
People
then.
are fainting over there, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's only their well-being, but we got a game to win. Things have changed a bit, Godfather.
Yeah, for the better in those cases.
All right, when we come back, it's quickly becoming our favorite thing in football, but Jim Harbaugh saying a lot of crazy stuff, and we got a great story from Alex Smith on Jim Harbaugh as well. The Chargers are 1-0, and as he would point out, you can't get to 2-0 unless you start with 1-0. That's coming up next on the Rip City Drive. The Rip City Drive is bringing the show to the Haven Spa Pool and Hearth in Clackamas Friday, September 27th from 3 to 6. Join Dwight and Chad as they broadcast live and collect new and gently used sports balls for the Boys and Girls Club of the Portland metro area. Get more details on the events page at ripcityradio.com. All right, it's time for today's Jim Harbaugh portion of the radio program. I got to be honest with you, Godfather. I've always loved Harbaugh, but this San Diego or LA Charger version of Harbaugh is the best.
Yeah. Yeah, he's really coming into his own as a flake.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
And here's what I've learned about being a great coach or a great leader. It doesn't matter how kooky you are or how you carry yourself, as long as you're genuine. If you're just real and you are who you are and people know that, your players know that, then you're going to be able to get along just fine. But if they sniff any type of fraudulent activity or that you're not really the coach or the man that you say you are, they're going to sniff it out quick and they're going to stop listening to you. But for Harbaugh, the kookiness is part of who he is.
Yeah.
All the corny sayings and the weird stuff and the ridiculous energy. I mean, the way he carries himself, like that's who he is, right? And the athletes and the coaches that the people, fans seem to have the biggest problem with are the guys that we view as being a fraud. Like Russell Wilson, for instance. The reason why most people that I know, that the ones who don't like Russ, is because they think he's a fraud.
Yeah.
That he's not real. It's fake, right?
Mm-hmm.
But with Harbaugh, he's consistently wacko because that's who he is. And I love this. And we're going to hear a story from Alex Smith. He has one simple goal in life: to play football as long as he can, then to coach football as long as he can, and then die. Faith, family, football. That's for him what matters most.
Well, he's got one real chance of realizing one of those goals.
He's crazy.
He is going to die.
Yes.
Eventually.
And I think he's one of those guys, too, that he feels fortunate to be able to do what he loves to do. And that's, right now, coach football. And I think he's the perfect match for this franchise that was in desperate need of leadership. I think he's the perfect match for the quarterback in Justin Herbert, who needed a legitimate football coach. And now, because the Chargers, as we mentioned yesterday, were willing to go out and spend the money necessary to bring in the right guy, now they're going to benefit greatly from it.
Yeah.
That investment, think about that. They're overpaying for a coach in ways they've never done before. But think about the return they're going to get on that investment in terms of the wins, the following, the fans, and then competing for a championship, what that's going to do for the franchise. And they've always been the team that no one cares about in town because it's a Rams town. They come up from San Diego. They're playing in the same stadium as the Rams, but Harbaugh brings legitimacy to the franchise because he knows what he's doing. He's got respect around the league. And people know that with him coaching that team and with Justin Herbert at quarterback, that they're going to be a force. Legitimacy instantly as soon as you make the hire. I love that.
I think it's true in every sport. If you can get the best coach, pay him whatever he wants. He's worth more than players are.
Yeah.
I mean, really. You can get players, but you can't get the best coach very often. When you can get him, spend the money and go get him. Because he's going to be one of the top coaches in that league. Already is, probably.
And one thing I heard him say today, and I love this, and this is why people on that level, whether it be in sports or in business, we often look at people like that, and it's like, well, why would they take that job? Or why would they go there? Like you mentioned it earlier with Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets, wanting the challenge of trying to be the guy that puts the Jets back on the map, on track, and compete for a championship, right? Well, that's what these guys do. When you are that good and you're in an elite level at your job, you want a challenge. And for Jim Harbaugh, the main reason why he left Michigan is because he wanted to go back to the NFL to have a shot to win the championship. Because he wants to measure himself against the best of the best in the best league in the world, against the best coaches, against the best players, against the best teams.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate measure for a coach of his caliber. He accomplished his mission at Michigan. That was to win a championship. Okay, great. I got that title, but what really matters to me is to go back and get it right this time in the Super Bowl, because it kills him to this day that he lost the Super Bowl to his brother John.
Yeah.
And he said that when I walked off the field, am I going to get another shot? He doesn't know. Because there's no guarantees in the NFL that you're going to get back to that point and have a chance to win a championship. But that is what he's pursuing. He wants to go out and try to win a trophy in the NFL, because that's the ultimate test. And I love that. I love people that are willing to take on a challenge like that and say, I'm going to take this path because I want to measure myself against the best. That tells me a lot about the man. I love that, Godfather.
Yeah, but not only that, Chad, when you hire him, he's already got the roadmap. He knows how to get there. Now, he needs the right players, and he needs a little bit of luck. He needs things to go his way a little bit. No injuries to key guys.
And you got to stay out of his way because he's maniacal.
He's going to want his way every time because he knows what he needs to get there. He knows that already. There's a whole bunch of guys coaching that league who have no clue how to get there.
All right. Alex Smith, former quarterback who played for Harbaugh in San Francisco. He shared a story on Fox Sports Radio today about Jim. Take a listen to this. This is when Alex Smith was at that point of his time in San Francisco where he thought he was on his way out the door. He wasn't sure he wanted to come back. He didn't think the team wanted him back. And then Harbaugh rolls in as coach, and this is what happened when they first met. Take a listen.
Harbaugh stories for days, Dan.
How about one I haven't heard that I can bring back to Jim?
To Jim. All right. Yeah, I mean, I got a few. I mean, first off, like I'll never forget when I first met him. You know, like we were in the building. It was actually right before the lockout was going on. I was getting ready to have my first child. So I'm kind of sneaking in. I'm getting ready to be a free agent, Dan. There's no way that the Niners are going to keep me. And I'm not sure I really want to be back with them either, you know? And so, but meanwhile, they still let me in the building to work out. So I'm coming in the building. I'm kind of sneaking in the ground floor and working out and getting out of there. And Jim comes down one day and I've been doing this for a couple of weeks, and I think he maybe caught wind, and he catches me down there, and he immediately comes up and introduces himself, but he's sizing me up immediately. Like literally not even being very discreet about it, literally sizing me up. I can tell he's like looking at my body, how tall I am. Oh, you're bigger than I thought, like kind of taller than I thought. And then he's like, hey, put your hand up. I'm like, what? So I put my hand up, and he puts his hand up next to mine. So we're hand to hand, right? And he's measuring my hand. I mean, I haven't met him. It hasn't been 2 minutes. And so he's looking at my hand. He's like, all right. Like this full inspection. He's like, hey, you want to go play catch? And I was, sure. Let's go. So he goes in and he's got this gnarly looking pinky on his throwing hand. So he tapes up his pinky, and just Jim and I go out on the practice field at the Niners, and we play catch. And we start just normal throwing, right? So like we're 10 yards away and tossing the ball to each other. And after a few, Danny starts like, I can tell he's like humming them at me, right? Like, so it's like, okay. And he's kind of like, come on, bring it on. And so I start humming them back at him, right? Here we are again. Like, I swear it hasn't been 10 minutes since I met the guy, and we're playing like pepper, 10 yards apart out on the practice field, just humming balls at each other as hard as we can, kind of who can catch them, who can throw it harder. Then he's like, okay. Then we go walk over and we start playing these throwing games at goalposts. And he's like moving me around. And he was obviously a lot younger. I mean, this was a long time ago. He can still throw it. And so we're playing all these throwing games at goalposts and trying to do all these contests. Hey, do this now. See if you can do this. This lasts about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And he's like, all right, okay. We walk in. That's enough. Doesn't say anything. I get no feedback at all on like how this went. I mean, I remember coming home to my wife and I'm like telling her about what happened. And she's like, well, what did you think? I'm like, I had no idea. No idea. Well, luckily a couple of days later, I go back into workout, Jim pops back down again and says, hey, you want to go play catch again? So this repeated. He and I go play catch for several weeks, just Jim and I playing catch and playing stupid games and pepper out on the field, and all of a sudden this kind of led to like, hey, what do you think about coming back? And it's just the way Jim is. And he's one of a kind, and he's all ball. All ball. I say this on the podcast, like Jim, he would tell the team this. He's like, Dan, his life aspirations were to play football as long as he could, and then coach football as long as he could, and then die.
Alex Smith. That's a great Jim Harbaugh story.
It is. Tells you a lot about him, too.
Introduces himself, immediately starts sizing up his quarterback, measures his hands, and then, hey, let's go play catch. And doesn't say a word about it after they're done. They just keep doing that for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
But I think that was Jim's way of getting a feel for him. How does my guy compete?
Yeah.
How does he throw the football? He was sizing him up. He was trying to decide during those times that they were meeting one-on-one whether he wanted him back as quarterback or not.
Yeah, it's probably all in all a smart thing to do. He got a real, feel for him after that. It reminds me of John Sakanik playing catch in baseball all the time. You get to know people when you do that.
You do. You start to talk. You open up. You get a feel for one another.
Yep.
You're right. That's a great way to put it. It's just like Sakanik playing his catch 365. All right, Jim Harbaugh, another crazy saying, Godfather. Here's what went down after the game, after they beat down the Raiders.
I just want to say, on behalf of all the newcomers to the Chargers, myself and everybody else, on behalf of them, I just want you to know, we're the lucky ones. We're the lucky ones. The worm has turned. The worm has turned. Coach, what?
2 game balls to give out.
2 game balls, all right? Okay.
Coach Harbaugh.
That was Harbaugh leading on the charge there. Yeah, yeah.
He got the game ball.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, for getting his first win with the franchise, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
The worm has turned.
Yeah.
Were you familiar with that saying?
I was. And I asked you, were you, Chad? You knew that saying, didn't you?
Never heard it before in my life.
Really? Because I was watching Good Morning Football, as I do, and none of them on that panel knew what that phrase was. It's an old phrase, but I had heard it many times. My mom used to say it, the worm has turned, or the worm is going to turn at some point.
It reminds me of when my great-grandpa used to call me a jarhead.
A jarhead?
Yes, but I looked up the worm has turned, and according to Rabbi Google, it says the worm has turned is an informal idiom that means a situation can suddenly change, and someone who has been unlucky or unsuccessful can become lucky or successful.
Yeah, especially if they're being pushed. At some point, even the meekest people, if they're pushed far enough, will turn. And like a worm doesn't turn, but if you push the worm far enough, you probably turn.
Here's a few examples on how to use the phrase. Quote, it seems the worm has turned. After years of silence, local people are beginning to protest about waste emissions from the factory. Quote, he bullied his assistant for years, but one day the worm turned and he walked out without notice, taking along his best clients. Quote, then my mother came home and started bossing us around. She said, the worm has turned. Things are going to be different around here.
I've heard that.
I've been there before.
Yeah.
Many a times my mom came home and started bossing me and my
Gotta
brother
be
around.
some changes made around here, fellas.
That's when the wooden spoon would come out.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And we had to be very careful in those moments how we dealt with that, because if we disrespected mom and it got back to dad, then we're going to have to deal with more problems and more lumber.
Did you ever hear, wait until your father gets home?
Yeah, all the time.
Oh, that was a bad one, too.
That's when I'd go and put on several pairs of underwear to get extra padding on my...
Cushion the blow.
Yeah, that's right, man. It's no joke. Let's see here. It says here, jarhead is a slang term for a member of the United States Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
The term originated during World War II and refers to the appearance of Marines in their dress blue uniforms. The high color of the uniform and the Marine's head sticking out of the top resembled a mason jar. Thanks a lot, Grampy. Really appreciate that.
Very kind.
But that's the genius of Harbaugh. If you're real and you operate like that all the time, people will respect you. Most importantly for Harbaugh, he's got the plan that you mentioned, and he's going to put the guys in a position to have success. His track record speaks for itself, so the players know he comes in with the cachet to get the job done. That's what's great about hiring a guy like that is instant credibility, right? That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I think, too, you don't get the results that he's gotten everywhere without pushing your players pretty hard. I think being goofy is a nice way for players to get laughing, to kind of take things not so seriously.
Yeah.
But at the same time, maybe when they're in that mindset, you can get them to work harder. I bet his players work as hard as any team in the league.
Well, there's no question. Just look at how they play.
Yeah, they practice hard, right?
Yeah, and it shows up on the field on Sundays. But what was it? I think it was Don Nelson, right? What did you ask Don Nelson once, the former NBA coach?
Well, he used to just scream at his players all the time. It's like, this is the NBA. You can't really yell at these guys, you know?
Yeah.
And I ran into him somewhere after a game. He was with the writer from Milwaukee, and I said, Nelly, I don't understand how you get away with that. And he looked at me and he said, it's really pretty simple. They know I love them. And the way he said it, I think they did. I think he did love them. And I think, it's like when your dad gets on your case. You know your dad loves you, and he's just telling you this for your betterment.
Yeah.
He's helping you out. And so you can get away with that stuff.
And they probably felt, just like I do with my dad, like that they want to do the right things and play well because they want to make him happy.
Yes. You want to please your daddy.
But I get the same thing when I hear guys who played for Pat Riley, the way they talk about him. Mm-hmm. They respected him so much and they cared so much about him that they wanted to play well for him.
Yeah.
They didn't want to let him down.
Yeah.
And he worked their asses off.
Mm-hmm.
But same thing, they knew that he loved them and cared about them.
Right. And it's like Riley is famous for this. He would go to bat for them in so many ways, and he took the time. He knew the names of their kids, their wife. He knew if somebody was sick, he would send flowers. He did all those little things to make people know he cared about them. And that matters. In the offseason, he would take care of guys, and look at some of their players that are still working there after all these years. He took care of his own.
Yeah, I'm a little bummed out that Harbaugh's with the Chargers because I don't care about the Chargers. I want Justin Herbert to do well because I really like him, but I'm not a Charger fan. The Broncos had a chance to hire Harbaugh, and they passed on it.
Mm-hmm.
He was looking for a way out last year. The Broncos talked to him, but they passed on it, and they ended up with Sean Payton. And I'm happy with Sean Payton. He's a great coach, but Harbaugh's my guy.
Yeah.
Harbaugh's really good. And I like the comedy that he brings.
Oh, his comedy is the best. He's wacky.
What a coaching family that is, by the way. Like Jim said, when he was a little boy, he used to just watch his dad and wanted to be just like him. And now he's just like him.
Yeah.
Coaching, loves ball, and he's crazy.
His dad was a known hard ass. He was a tough guy.
Back in the day, you could be like that, too.
Yeah. Yeah, you could.
What are they going to do?
All the football coaches were.
All right, we'll keep things rolling. Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad. We're going to talk with Mike Parker, the great Mike Parker. He's going to join us coming up at 5:20. We have a 4-pack of tickets for the Thorns. We're going to give those away next. And also, is there a chance that we could see Dame back in a Trailblazer uniform before the end of his career? We'll talk about that next. Oh, good news, Godfather. For those of you who enjoy satellite radio, they have permanently put Yacht Rock on channel 17.
Oh, it's about time.
So if you like smooth rock from the late 70s and early 80s, you can get it year-round now.
On your car radio. Yeah.
The problem is on the other station they had, I didn't have the right receiver to be able to tune up to a channel that high. So I had to stream it, go Bluetooth on the satellite app, which is okay. But it's just nice to be able to punch a button on the radio and have the songs right there.
Much more convenient, yes.
All right, we have a 4-pack of tickets for the Portland Thorns. They're going to take on Chicago coming up on the 13th, which is this weekend.
Oh, Friday the 13th this week.
That's right, Friday the 13th. Chicago's going to be in town. If you, we want to hear from Thorns fans. Do you like soccer? Call now.
Wherever you may be.
503-248-0620. The first caller through will get a 4-pack of tickets for the Thorns taking on Chicago Friday the 13th. 503-248-0620. 503-248-0620. Call now. 4-pack of tickets for the Thorns and Chicago coming up on Friday right here in the heart of the city. 503-248-0620. All right. I want to ask you this question. We've seen this pop up. In fact, Justin Hopkins from Scoop Duck put out a sweet post online where his son ran into Dame. I think it was at Washington Square.
Mm-hmm.
And Dame took time to take a picture with him and his teammates and so forth. And, you know, it's cool. I know some of Dame's family from the golf course and different people who are here in town. And I see Dame around Northeast and different parts of town all the time. And he's not even playing here anymore. He's in Milwaukee, but he spends a lot of his time here during the course of the offseason. In fact, we were talking to David Lucas on Friday when he was here, and he spends a lot of time with Dame, and Dame loves Portland. No one ever wanted to believe it because most stars in the NBA, when they say they love a town, they're not being genuine. They really want to get out to a bigger town. But this is Dame's home. He loves it here.
His kids are here, too.
His kids are here. And this is where he wants to be, and he spends his time here. So what I was wondering, because I think Dame would want to do this because he said he would like to do this. When he's done with his contract in Milwaukee, do you think there's a way that the Blazers would look to bring Dame back, much in the same way that the Mariners did with Griffey, and let Dame have another year to finish out his career in a Trailblazer uniform? Because I think that'd be pretty special to have him in uniform to finish out the career with the Trailblazers, even after the time in Milwaukee.
Oh, I think there's a real good chance of it because he would want it. That's what would make it happen. You know, at that point of his career, whenever that happens, 4 or 5 years from now, who knows, really? But if he makes it known, the team he's playing for by then will probably want to take care of him. And if he wants to come back here, he'll have made a lot of money. He'll be able to fit into the salary cap somewhere, somehow. And I think for his last year, he would take whatever he had to take to come back and play one more year here. I was thinking it could happen sooner than that, Chad. If they get a front office change, I don't think the current front office would be interested. And they're also at a different point of the salary of the team being rebuilt. So it wouldn't fit right now. But at some point, a year or two from now, when they say, okay, we're done tanking, we're going for it, we got a little bit of a team going here, and we think we have a shot, maybe then you can make some kind of deal to bring him back because he does like it here. He wants to be here. And, he got his way the last time he said he wanted to be traded. And, he can probably make something happen if he really wants to.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool. The other thing I love about Dame, and this is not the only instance that we see with him taking time to spend some time with some boys out at Washington Square. For a global superstar the way he is now, he's still very accessible here in town to people that want to talk to him or get a picture to spend some time with. The cool thing about Portland is that he's kind of embraced now by the locals, and he's been around so much that people, they kind of let him be, right? He's not harassed. He can go out to a restaurant. He can hang out in Northeast or wherever he's at in town and be able to enjoy himself without, the constant throngs of people. Portland's pretty cool like that.
Well, and Dame's pretty cool, too. That's what makes it work is he's not bothered by that too much.
No.
Obviously, there are situations where people need to understand he's eating dinner. Come on.
Yeah.
He's got 2 little kids there he's trying to take care of. Leave him alone for now. But he's always very good with fans, particularly kids. He gets it with kids. He understands. That's the place that you really want to be careful, and you really want to be, I think, at your best when you're around those kids.
I agree. Did I tell you I ran into Terrell Brandon on the golf course the other day?
No, really?
I did. I saw TV.
I haven't seen him in so long.
And I had never met, I don't think I ever met Terrell Brandon, but what happened is that I pulled off on the 9th hole. I had to take a leak, right? So I went and I ventured back into the woods behind the blackberry bushes.
Come on, Chad.
I did. No one could see me. I was back in the woods.
But there's bathrooms around the 9th hole, isn't there?
No, not for the situation I had. I had to pee really bad, like a racehorse. So I went back and unloaded in the woods where no one could see me. And I had set my driver down and leaned it up against the little pole there. And so I ran back up the fairway with my clubs. I got up there to hit my approach shot, and I realized that I left my driver behind. So I had to run back to get my driver. It's kind of an important club. And that's when I look over. I'm like, Terrell Brandon, what's up, man? And I went over and said hi to him. I recognized him right away. And I just said, good to see you out here on the course. And then he kind of dapped me up, and then I took off.
I haven't seen him in a long time, but that was a guy who never aged much. He kind of looks the same. He's always looked.
And he still kind of looks the same.
He's in great shape and good guy.
I'm sure he appreciated me exchanging pleasantries. I'm the idiot that forgot my driver.
Yeah.
All right, we'll keep things rolling. When we come back, we're going to hear from Dan Lanning and his thoughts on the Beavs. All right, what's going on, my friends? It's now 5 o'clock chat here. We'll start with the NFL. The 49ers got their win last night in their opener against the Jets, but Christian McCaffrey's status for week 2 against the Vikings is unknown as he continues to deal with ankle and Achilles injuries. San Francisco is favored Sunday by 6 over Minnesota. That kickoff at 10 a.m. on CBS. Oregon and Oregon State will meet up Saturday in the Civil War. The Ducks favored by over 2 touchdowns, 16 points right now. Kickoff is 12:30 from Reeser. Pregame is at 10:30 on your home of the Beavs, 1190 KEX. We're going to talk with the voice of the Beavs, Mike Parker, who's going to stop by at 5:20. Auburn quarterback Peyton Thorne says bettors have asked for payment via Venmo after Saturday's loss to California. Shiloh Sanders out 2 to 3 weeks after suffering a broken forearm Saturday. The Buffs will take on Colorado State this weekend. All right, a couple of texts here, Godfather. From the 971, he says, watch the Harbaugh presser about glide theory on YouTube. 10 times better than the audio, especially the end of that presser when he reads something he wrote, quote, I'm a better writer than speaker, but that's just me. So we've got more Harbaugh fans out there. Tony in Portland says he's down with Phil Collins as well and says that Another Day in Paradise is the song he believes is the number one. So thank you, Tony. We appreciate your input on that. Hey, Tony, how did you feel about Caleb in week 1 and the Bears getting a win? Were you happy about that? Or are you gripping because he didn't play well and the Ducks also struggle against Boise? Feel free to call in and share your thoughts if you'd like. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Let's take a listen. Let's see here. Should we go to the phones? Is Raider Mike out there? I was informed that Raider Mike can only stay on hold for a few minutes before he's got to get off. So let's go there right now.
Sure.
Let's go to Raider Mike, see what's cracking. What's up, Raider Mike? What's on your mind?
Godfather.
Yeah.
My boy, Chad.
What's up?
Waiting for that tea time still. Anyway, tonight. Oh, you know, that's a great song. I mean, Genesis, he had so many good songs. You almost have to do lottery with that.
No, I picked my song. It's Easy Lover. It's Easy Lover. That is by far my number one Phil Collins song.
Easy Lover with Earth, Wind, and Fire?
With Philip Bailey from Earth, Wind, and Fire, yes.
Yeah. I can't do that, Chad. I can't do that one.
What's the problem with that one, Mike?
You know what I called him in for, though? In fact, Shacker didn't even say it. I'm Blazer Dame Mike today. I want him back here. This place grows on you. You two know this. Once it gets your grips in you, you're like, I always just want to go back there. It's a stunning place. It's beautiful.
It is.
Got good people here.
No, we do.
So I want Dame back in the house. Big time. Lastly, NFL. Wow. Raiders should have won that game. Not worried about it no more. There's 17 games. But we're going into the Hornets' nest, and all my friends and family are Ravens. That's where I went to college, Chad. I don't know if I told you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
0-2.
Yeah. If we lose and go 0-2, thank you, Goodall, for making sure we open up against the Harbaugh brothers and make sure that the other brother gets 10 days rest before we got to fly 3,000 miles away. Well done, Goodell. The NFL will never stop playing with us. It's fun, though. That's what's so fun about being a Raider fan. You're the only team where the entire country's gunning for you before the season even starts. Anyway, Raiders! Tea time. Let's go, Chad, before it gets crappier.
There you go. There's Raider Mike.
Yeah.
Spoken like a true Raider fan. Should have won the Charger game. The NFL is out to get us.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Goodell. He sounded like he was struggling a little bit there.
Struggling.
Let's go out to Ben in Salem. He's a Bears fan. Hey, Ben, what'd you think about the Bears in week 1 with Caleb Williams? What was that experience like for you?
Are you there?
Yes, Ben. What'd you think about the Bears?
Oh, dude, I'm stoked. They won.
They did.
Quite a performance.
But what'd you think about Caleb in week 1?
So Caleb, you know, I like the kid. I think he's going to be okay. I don't blame it all on him. I think Keenan Allen played a big part in some of his numbers there. I think he could have had a touchdown, or maybe even 2 touchdowns if he would have, you know, caught a couple of those balls. But yeah, I think we're going to be fine. I think Caleb, you know, he's a rookie. You know, blow the brakes on all the hype. You know, we got a good defense. We're going to be fine.
There you go. It's that simple. Got a good defense. They're going to be fine.
Well,
I'm not worried
helps.
about Caleb Williams at all. And the guy's a franchise quarterback. It's just going to take a little bit of time for him to get up to speed. But I have no doubts that guy's going to be a superstar. I believe in him that much. But what we're learning is the preseason is not the regular season. And playing quarterback in the NFL is the hardest thing to do in sports. And it takes time for even the legit ones, the number 1 picks, to get a feel for the game. It's not going to happen overnight. You got any thoughts on that? Nothing? Anything?
No, I mean, it's not like you're saying something controversial. It's very difficult for a rookie to walk in the door and be able to play quarterback in an actual regular season game where he's not playing against somebody's second team in a vanilla defense.
Well, what are people expecting from these rookie quarterbacks in week 1? 4 touchdowns, 300 yards,
I was just going to
no
say,
picks?
They're expecting too much. That's what they're expecting. Too much.
Gosh.
It's not going to happen. It gets harder every year because everything is so much more sophisticated than it used to be. I'm telling you, 10 years ago, it wasn't like this. It wasn't. You hear these guys watch Sean Payton calling a play on the sideline. It takes him 30 seconds to get the play out. It's so long. It's unbelievable. Just the length of the play, all the things that they're having to say when they call a play. It's unbelievable. And I don't know how these kids do it.
I just hate people trying to tell me what Caleb Williams is or Bo Nix is after one game. One game.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Well, and you know how hard it is just to snap the football in that league now. You know, in college, they clap their hands, right? Gruden talked about that on his latest podcast. You clap your hands. Well, in the pros, it's not quite that easy.
Did you watch that video? He went into the room where it's soundproof and you can practice your your snap count.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, he had a room for everything.
I just hate people trying to tell me what a team is after one game, what a player is after one game. It drives me absolutely bonkers.
Yeah.
We don't know. I don't even know what Bo Nix is, but I'm going to have many more weeks to be able to sit back and take a look. And we'll get a good look this Sunday when he goes from the Seahawks defense to the Pittsburgh Steelers defense.
Fire, what is it? Frying pan into the fire?
Yeah. Yeah, it's rough. Oh, someone else wants to talk Phil Collins. I'm down with that. Let's go out to Jackie in Sherwood. Jackie, have you identified your favorite Phil Collins song?
Chad and Godfather, hi.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hi. Do you guys remember Home by the Sea, the long version?
Yes, it's a great song.
The long version is always better.
Yes, very good.
Is that your favorite?
That's not my favorite. My favorite is In the Air Tonight.
Okay. We have no issue with that. That's the Godfather's favorite as well.
For sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
Phil
all
Collins.
I had. Thank you, guys.
No, Jackie, I appreciate that. Yeah, give me some volume on this. Oh, come on, Shacker. What are you? I hate it when he teases me with the Phil Collins. He starts playing a great song and then he cuts it off. There we go.
He was pretty quick on the draw.
Don't tease me, man. Don't tease me, bro. Don't tease me.
Don't tase me, bro.
All right. His voice has got a unique sound, too.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Unmistakable.
Can we play all 11 minutes of this song?
That's a great song. He's another one of those guys that didn't really want to be the lead singer either.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and then his band members were like, yeah, we kind of need you to be the lead singer.
Huh.
It's always the great ones that don't know how great they are. All right. I appreciate that, Shacker. Thank you. Let's take a listen to Dan Lanning. Apparently, he's excited for some Beeve action.
Obviously very excited to play Oregon State. They've had some success these first couple weeks, done a really good job running the ball. I think they're a really well-coached team. You know, the guy playing quarterback has done an unbelievable job. We actually watched a lot of his film before because he was at Idaho. So super athletic. Their run game is really good. Defensively, like they've always been since I've been here, really sound and create some tough looks. So it's going to be a fun challenge for us.
So you're on the left with Eric.
Kind of touched on the end there, but Trent now being the head coach, what stood out maybe kind of game planning for him in the past in terms of the defense and kind of him in his position?
You know, I think they still have a lot of a similar identity to what they've been as a team there in the past. You know, they're willing to get big and run the ball. They play sound when it comes to defensive play. They still take shots down the field. They're pretty creative in their package at times. So a lot of similarities to what you've seen there in the past with certainly some of his new flavor in there.
Right here on the right.
Coming out of spring ball, I think a lot of guys were excited about Jay Harris, but we haven't seen him get any touches yet. So how's his adjustment been, and what have you seen from him lately?
Yeah, Jay's working his tail off. He's doing an unbelievable job for us. You know, and I know when his time comes, he'll be able to do, a really, really good job. But he's practicing really hard. I think he's, continuing to create roles for himself. And hopefully that gives him an opportunity at some time to be out there on the field for us.
You know, the problem is with these coaches, Godfather, is that you don't really know what they think about the opponent they're going to play because they all have coach speak.
Yeah.
You know, Lou Holtz, every time they played Navy, he's like, oh, it's going to be a tough game for us. And then they go out and hang half a hundy on them and win the game by 30.
Yeah. No, he's so good. I mean, not a negative word ever comes out of his mouth, whether he's talking about his guys, their guys, anybody else's guys. Everybody's good, spectacular, special.
Unless he's talking about Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't positive.
But that was to his players. That was a halftime thing to his players, not really media stuff. But.
Yeah, but the cameras were there recording it.
Yeah.
So they clearly wanted it out. Yeah, I just wish the coaches would be honest. And look, I've looked at the film. They suck, and we're going to kick their ass. I just want to hear one coach in my lifetime say that, but it's never going to happen.
No.
Because they all got to play the game of we respect them. We're excited to play them. They do a really great job. They're sound on both sides of the football. Their quarterback's really good. I mean, really? Because I'm concerned about Oregon State's passing game. I want to see McCoy stretch the field a little bit. I think he's going to have to in order to win that game.
Yeah, I would think so, too. I don't think they can line up and run. I mean, it's not going to be like the second half of the Civil War 2 years ago. I don't think they're going to be able to give the ball to the running back every play and never pass like they did in the second half of that game. Not going to be that way.
No, the run game will be the entree. Like, they're going to run the football, and they're going to need to run it well, but
run to set up the pass.
Well, you just need the quarterback to make some plays and extend drives through the air from time to time.
Yeah.
That's all. And, we haven't seen Giovanni McCoy in that spot with the Beavs yet to know if he can do that. But then again, can the Ducks run the football? Because they haven't shown they can do that either. Not even close. Can they protect the quarterback?
Yeah.
Can they win without scoring 2 special teams touchdowns?
Yeah.
All right. We're going to get into that coming up next. The voice of the Beavs, Mike Parker. The sultry tones of Mike Parker is coming up next on the Rip City Drive.
20 and 21 in the 2 games at Stanford in the playoffs in '82. Trotsky takes high and in. Oh, my goodness! No! No! That's terrible! That is terrible! That is terrible! I'm telling you that he took the pitch high and inside for ball 3, and it was called strike 3 on Jabin Trotsky. And you heard me, and I apologize, but not too much. Travis Bazzana takes a strike and the count 0-1. I mean, I'm just simply writing down takes high and inside ball 3, and all of a sudden I see Steve Mattingly ringing Trotsky up. It's maybe the second time this year I've gotten that upset, but for those of you who may have seen it, even though it's still whether justified or not, it is incorrect and boorish behavior. I'm sorry, but it was bad.
Well, what he calls bad, I call fabulous. He is the one and only voice of the Oregon State Beavers, the incomparable Mike Parker. Doc, what's going on, my friend?
Well, at least I was right in describing that's terrible, because that was terrible. When I hear it back, like, oh, my gosh, that is terrible. And I'm not talking about Steve Mattingly or whomever made the call on Trotsky. I'm sorry. I'll be fine and quite calm, I'm sure, for 3.5 hours come Saturday afternoon.
Oh, we hope not.
We hope not. Hey, Mike, you've been calling this game and been around this game for so long. Isn't it bizarre to be getting ready for Oregon in September? What's that like for you?
Very strange indeed. I see all the notes about their meeting for the first time undefeated since like 1897 or something like that. I mean, nobody's ever been able to get through both being undefeated, even in some really big years like 2000, probably the closest we've been to it. But yes, this will be my 52nd consecutive year attending the game in person.
Unbelievable.
I haven't missed one since moving to the Beaver State in 1973, so this will be number 52, but nothing quite like it playing in mid-September.
You've been going to Civil War games longer than I've been alive. That is remarkable.
Yeah, and I can feel it too in my bones. You guys saw me hobbling around when you did your excellent show from Reeser a few weeks back.
Hey, I'm not going to lie. You look great. You've leaned down. You look like a lean machine. I was impressed, man. You're looking good, Doc.
Well, thank you, Doc. The one thing I have done over the years, and I'm still able to, I don't use elevators, even in the newfangled and beautiful stadium. I've only been on the elevator once. I try to take the stairs and hope to try to at least keep fighting and fighting the inevitable.
Well, if you disappear, we'll know where to look for you. We'll head right for the stairs.
Yeah, that's somewhere. It's a new configuration to get up there, and it's longer. It takes longer. It's harder than back in the old days, but it's worth the climb.
Mike, we're only 2 games into the season, but I wanted to ask you, what impresses you the most about this start that the Beavers have had?
I would say the offensive line play, which, losing 4 starters off of last year's team, I was concerned going in, even though I knew there'd been some guys who've been in the rotation, and they did bring in 2 transfers who'd played very well at Colorado. So I thought, okay, we may be okay there, but I think we've been better than okay through 2. Granted, it isn't, everybody knows the step up, the incredible step up to the level of fierceness on the other side is coming. But even so, I think Kyle Devan, the first-year offensive line coach, has developed a pretty deep and versatile rotation, keeping guys fresh. The running back room has thrived behind a line that's still pushing people and moving people. They'll have their biggest challenge, obviously, Saturday in that regard. But I think that they're finding more success in the run game than I thought they'd have. And I think that's allowing Giovanni McCoy, who I thought took some significant steps up with respect to how he threw the football against San Diego State, and will need to be able to do that even more so Saturday afternoon. But the O-line play in general and a run game I knew they wanted to lean on, Dwight, has been better thus far than I thought it might be, and they're going to need to be really good on Saturday again.
We're talking with Mike Parker, voice of the Bees. How many rushing yards do you think they would need to beat Oregon?
That's a good question. I think if they're going to probably need to be in the 180 to 220 range, probably, to have a legitimate shot and not put too much pressure on Giovanni McCoy against a really talented secondary. So, that's asking a lot of that running back room and those guys to put up that kind of number. But it would tell me that they're possessing the ball and controlling the ball and dominating the time of possession if they're in that neighborhood. And so I think that's probably the neighborhood they need to be in.
Mike, I haven't really felt like I've seen enough of McCoy to really know what's there in the passing game. I would assume we're going to see a little more of that this week. Is he ready for that? And how much is he going to have to throw against the Ducks?
Yeah, and that to me. That's the big question, as we just sort of talked about. If the Beavers can continue to ride that three running back room with Hankerson, Griffin, and Saladin Allah, and not be in must-throw situations. They've had very few of those through two games where the down and distance would dictate throwing. I mean, you haven't come up against it much, and I imagine that will happen. But again, Dwight, I thought Giovanni this past weekend, I don't know how much you saw of the game, and you're right, it's still a pretty small sample size, but I thought he showed some arm strength that, again, I wasn't quite sure that he had. Some of his hash-marked opposite sideline passes were on a dime. They were well delivered. They were accurate. Trent Walker, David Wells Jr. made some catches on balls that had zip, and he put them in spots where only his guy could get them in tight windows at times. The flea flicker pass was dropped. It was beautifully thrown. The naked boot to Bryce Caulfield the guy was wide open, yeah, but he executed that play. He used his legs a couple of times to get first downs when he needed to. I thought it was a big step from game one to game two in terms of what they asked him to do. It'll be way bigger Saturday against Oregon, but I think he's growing more comfortable with what they want him to do, and I think he can, quote unquote, make all the throws that they need to make in this offense. We'll need to see more of it probably Saturday, but I think we've got a shot to see it.
How do you think the first two games, Idaho State and who do you got? San Diego State. I mean, does that prepare them for a team like Oregon?
Well, comparative scores, you might say, yeah, look, what's Oregon done? But the problem is, what Oregon has done to me is they've done what they've had to do to win, and there are flashes of the spectacular in that process, particularly against Boise State. So there is I think, a healthy, legitimate concern that they will put together, play to their talent level, which is extremely high in all position groups. I mean, it really is. I've been watching the Boise State-Oregon game on Peacock on demand. I can call it up anytime I want. I demand it, and here it comes. And so I'm watching. It's kind of nice to have something every once in a while on demand. So as I've been working my way through it, watching the plays, repeating I think there at times I thought, oh my goodness. Gabriel's good. Tez Johnson's good. Stewart's good. Sadiq is good. On the offensive side alone, Woodington in the return game, and the defense making physical, athletic plays. And yet, when I look up, they had to get a couple of special teams gigantic plays to win that game. So it makes me wonder. Their talent level is superb, and it's hard for me thus to say that Idaho State and San Diego State are in any wise the preparation for a team like Oregon. One thing that Kyle Devan, the O-line coach, did tell me was that San Diego State, even though they don't do so with the same speed and physicality that Oregon will bring, did run a lot of defensive fronts that are very similar to what, in terms of what they were trying to do to the Bees and slow down their run game. And they actually did for stretches in that game. And Devan said that what SDSU was running had some similarities in terms of scheme. They just know they've got to be physically ready to deal with a much superior group in Oregon than they did in either of their first 2 weeks. But he thinks the first 2 weeks, at least from a schematic standpoint, has given them a little bit of an idea of what they'll be up against.
Mike, in these rivalry games, I'm always curious about what the atmosphere is going to be like in the stadium, and also curious if the home team, in this case the Beavers, can do anything to ensure the fact that they'll have the home field advantage. Have they limited? Is there a way to limit access to Oregon Duck ticket holders, or what is done in that? I assume the game is sold out already. Maybe it's not.
It is.
Is it?
No, it is. The last of the standing rooms went earlier today. There were a few standing rooms left. They're gone. And there are strategic ways. I'm not quite sure the ways. My favorite line in Monty Python and the Holy Grail is, and there are many, but one is among my favorites anyway. Who are you that's so wise in the ways of science? And so I don't know. I would like to say to the ticket directors and our own Aaron Meisel, who are you that's so wise in the ways of ticket distribution? Because there are strategic ways to kind of vet who's ordering the tickets, who gets, even if, you have a certain number, and I honestly don't know what the exact number of allotment, the required allotment for visiting teams. There is that number. Those, of course, are spoken for and gone, but fans of other visiting teams come in and try to circumvent that and the Beavers try, I'm sure any home team, Oregon does it too, try to limit who is ordering the tickets. Now, how legally and how strategically they do that, I don't know, but I do know, Dwight, that efforts are made in every ticket department to try to make sure they get most of their fans, and rather than have people find ways to circumvent the system or find loopholes and get in with the idea that that they're fans of the other team. But how they do that exactly, I don't know.
Victory is mine. We thank thee, Lord, that in thy mercy. Come on, then. What? Have at you!
It's just a flesh wound.
You're indeed brave tonight, but the fight is mine. Oh, and enough, eh?
Oh, it's so good. I'm so glad you brought up Monty Python, my friend.
Yeah, and then that's the flesh wound is a pretty good line too. They just keep coming, don't they? That film holds up. I saw it when it came out when I was in high school, early in my Civil War game run, and I've been watching Monty Python, and I think rivalry games at least once a year ever since.
Well, we got a couple of more questions for you. Special teams. We saw the Ducks beat Boise last week with great special teams play. What do you think about the Beavs special teams and how it measures up?
Yeah, a little bit shaky so far in that, in game one, Peyton Hogan making his first snapped it out of the end zone for a safety, but he was spot on with all those. That was, I think, sort of, oh my gosh, I'm doing this for the first time, and we saw what happened. He's been good ever since, so I think he's okay there. The Beavers haven't had a Silas Bold and Anthony Gould type moment yet in their repertoire in terms of the return game, and that's at this point, that's been a loss off of last year's team that hasn't really come into play. But when you watch what Oregon did, you see what a dynamic, game-changing thing that can be with those spectacular returns, how well they were blocked, the speed and the athleticism to make those things happen. The Beavers have had those dimensions in their own return game and at least we haven't seen anything quite like that or haven't had a need to. The punt game, Josh Green has been okay, but Ross James, I think, boomed one out the other day to about a 69-yarder. Kicking for both, Atticus Sappington missed an extra point. Yeah, there is that.
Yeah.
And Everett Hayes, a big leg guy, has been a little inconsistent. I don't know. I do think right now the eyeballs would tell you that that's an advantage for the visitors into Corvallis on Saturday. But the Beavers did block a punt, and they read the film well and took advantage of some vulnerabilities on San Diego State's part and blocked a punt. And so, I think the special team, it's too early to know exactly, but right now probably advantage Oregon, but we'll see.
All right. With everything that's gone down with the conference realignment, what's happened to the Bees, what would how much would a win mean this weekend?
It's interesting, Chad, in that Trent was asked that directly, Coach Bray, and what would it mean for you to get a win as a head coach in the rival? He said, well, it means we're 3-0, which spoken like a guy, a true coach with, I don't want to get caught up and all of that. I want to prepare my team to play. And Trent Bray, I think, has done an outstanding job through 2 games in doing just that. And so it would mean, he tells us, and he's right, it would mean if you win, he's 3-0, the Beavers are 3-0, but it would be the best 3-0 in the history of the program. That's all I'm saying. I mean, if they win, Trent, Chad, if it's Trent Bray's, I mean, all of the emotion around it, whether the game should be played or not played, there's still a lot of people that are kind of fighting each other on that in social media, and even on our own local show, we get texts and calls from people saying we shouldn't even be playing this game. And I think they might feel differently if the Beavers do win it. And it's a game that I think should be played every year. It's the 128th edition. I think it makes sense to play it every year, and this might be, if the Beavers find a way, and I think they've got a shot at it. I really do. The way they're running the ball, the momentum they bring, how crazy, loud, and rollicking and rowdy Reeser will be. Oregon, though, I know is going to bring its best shot. Their players and coaches are actually talking more about it in a rhetorical way than the Beavers have. They're kind of, they're buttoned down and ready to do a job and not engaging at all in what the quote unquote the game means. Bryce Betra, I think, used the word, it's our Super Bowl, kind of, after, losing here 2 years ago and blowing a 31-10 lead late when the Beavers ran it and came back and beat them. They're embracing, I think, a little bit more of the emotion, at least publicly. But behind closed doors, you don't need to cue up Charlie Rich, but behind closed doors, I think Trent and the Beavers are getting pretty fired up in their own right. It'll mean a lot more than being 3-0. It'll mean one of the biggest victories in the history of the series for either team, in my opinion.
Mike Shacker, can you cue up Charlie Rich? Is that possible? Just for Mike.
It's a great song.
It is a great song, and Chad, I'm glad you know. There you go.
Yeah, that's
Chad could win a lot of money on Name That Tune. He's really good.
You got to keep in mind, Mike, I did grow up in Oklahoma, and I grew up, my grandpa listened to a lot of 45s, and most of it was country. So I got an education on some of the old country, my friend.
Yes, you do. I heard you. You had the right pitch. You had the right tune. And that was a big hit for Charlie Rich, the Big Boss Man, and some other tunes. And I have a bunch of 45s still, including that, I think, on a 45. So I'm with you there.
Can you still play your 45s? Do you have a player?
I do. I've never lost the records or the 45s.
Love
Still
that.
have them, and we have a bad. It's not good. It's not a great turntable, but it suffices.
You never cease to continue to impress me. I love the fact that you still got the vinyl, Mike. That's badass. Love that.
Well, I know you're the guy that keeps us connected to the beautiful music scene in Portland, so I appreciate you appreciating that, Chad.
All right, one more question for you. If you had to pick one Phil Collins song to listen to before you die, which one you going with?
Okay. I'm not a huge, but for whatever reason, maybe it's the video. I kind of like Against All Odds.
Okay.
And maybe that's our life and our life story here. So I'll go with Against All Odds.
All right. That's a perfect song for the week, my friend. The voice of the Beavers, Mike Parker. Doc, we appreciate it, buddy. You're the best.
Okay, guys. Great to talk to you. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Give some volume for good old Doc.
I haven't heard this in a long time.
That's a good song. Nice work. There's Doc, Mike Parker. Love him. Yeah, a lot of kids didn't know what went on behind closed doors until they walked in by accident. It's like, ah!
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good song. And this will make my grandpa happy right here. He loved this stuff. He loved watching the Masters. He loved turning the 45s. And I think I told you my grandpa had Lou Gehrig's disease, so I never heard him talk, right? But he had the typewriter right next to his chair. So when a movie came on in the evening on HBO that he didn't think it was appropriate for me and my brother to watch with him, he would type a message and tell us to go away. Leave the room because he didn't want us to be polluted.
But he watched it.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That's how that went. All right, we'll keep things rolling. We'll come back. High Fives coming up next. Yeah, in honor of Mike Parker, voice of the Beavs, he named Against All Odds as his favorite Phil Collins song.
I actually forgot this one. This one is good.
I think what happened with Phil is that he was so white hot for an extended period of time that some people just got tired of him. Too many hit songs. I mean, he was on radio play, MTV nonstop for multiple years.
Yeah, I just thought, too, when you release so many hits so fast, one after another, that some of them just get lost in the shuffle. They get buried by the next one that comes out.
It's remarkable. Let's go back out to the phones. Eddie, who's out in Vancouver, has got thoughts on Phil. Eddie, what's up? Welcome to the show. What's your favorite Phil Collins song?
Hey, Chad, man, you know what? I would say it's, Philip Bailey.
Easy Lover.
Freaking
Easy Lover.
Easy Lover. Easy Lover probably would be my favorite, but in the air tonight, I think it's a tie for those two songs. But what I do want to say, Chad, though, is the modern day Phil Collins, like how you just said, he's had hit every for like 10 years, 11 years straight. He had a top hit, a number one song like every month, But the modern day Phil Collins was Adam Levine from Maroon 5. If you think about it.
Yeah.
But and then here's another thing I want to say. But I would love to see them play tribute to Phil Collins if they did like a duet and do that song Easy Lover. But it'd be Bruno Mars and Adam Levine. I think that'd be rad. But Chad, most importantly, I want to tell you, the Denver Broncos, man, they've had some glory days, and I'm looking for more glory days for you. I'm a Seahawks fan, but I'm wishing you a glory hole season, Chad.
I want you to have I want glory hole, man. I definitely want some glory hole.
You don't.
Dude, Eddie, I got to give you props to your squad, man. I was up at the game on Sunday, and that defense was flying around. And as Dwight said, handled with the tackling. They were nice.
Yep. I thought about you too, man. But I was scared for a while. I thought maybe you, what you're saying last week, you might walk away out of there with the win. It was looking kind of hairy until halftime. But
that first half was one of the worst first halves of football I've seen in quite some time. There was a total of 223 yards combined, 3 turnovers, 2 safeties, and 12 first downs. It was like, what in the world's going on out there?
Yeah, I was almost going to go walk the dog until they turned it around. It started to get bad.
Oh, man. Kenneth Walker's nice, by the way. That guy's a stud.
Yeah. And Godfather, Kenneth Walker today on Angry Runs on Good Morning Football today, huh? How'd you like that?
I saw it. Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah. And Godfather, one thing to you, man, is I'm 52 years old, and Chad, I worked at the keg. I was a keg or salad tender. So from before, I called before in the past. But anyway, Godfather, I worked for the Oregon Journal. Godfather, I worked for the Oregon Journal.
What did you do?
And I delivered the newspaper. I delivered newspapers, and I went around and got orders, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I will never forget, my 8th grade year, I had a science project, and I winged, last minute, I winged it, and I went and grabbed that final edition, got some poster board and taped that final edition. It had, that paper had the Mount St. Helens eruption, when Kennedy got shot, if you remember that paper, the final edition of the Oregon Journal, and everyone was drawn to that display, to my booth area from that Oregon Journal. But so I got that in common with you, Godfather. I worked for the Oregon Journal. Then I also worked for the Oregonian at the publication distribution in the warehouse, inserting the papers, doing that work. But
what keg did you work at?
Yes.
Which location?
I worked at Lake Oswego. And I'm a big foodie, you guys, and I got to call back some other time. And I've been in the restaurant business for 25 years. I'm out of it now, but like 30 years. But I waited on so many Blazers, so many stories. I'll tell you some stories about Duckworth. But, some good stories over at the keg. And the keg in Lake Oswego. It used to be the old Sea Galley, Godfather. I'm probably too young to remember that. We got crab legs. You remember the old Sea Galley. But, yeah, we're talking like all the top. It was the keg. Chad, you remember how awesome the keg was. You go in that kitchen in the grill. You see about 20 steaks on the grill, a prime rib. And I was like, how can these guys do this? They're amazing cooks to be able to know which one's rare, medium, and it was. But I love the keg. I'm a kegger for life, and I miss that place.
Dude, that was fun, man. I had a blast. Eddie, call anytime, and please call back with stories. We need more of your stories.
Absolutely, Eddie.
I did. I worked at the keg off of 4th Plain over in Vancouver before I started working at the Health Experience. And I would salad tend 2 nights a week and I would be a busboy a couple of nights a week. I preferred the busboy work because the salad tending was, was challenging. One, you had your whole display right out there in the front, right by the dining room, so people could come over and order a salad from you. There, you could get a handmade Caesar or a spinach salad. But the problem is, you get some of these granny ladies over there and stuff, and they would like eyeball everything that you did and try to tell you to make your salad. It was very annoying.
Pressure's on there.
Plus, I had to wear one of those douchey white outfits with the pointy hats. So the uniform for the salad tender was bad. But what really sucked was at the end of the night, they not just the special salads I made, the spinach or the Caesar, but I had to break down the salad bar. And that was a major pain in the butt because you had to clean out, you had to take out all the containers with like the peas and the carrots and all the dressings and all that
Salad
stuff.
dressings, yeah.
And then I had to have this bucket and you had to bust the ice and then you had to clean the ice out of there and dry it all down. That was a pain in the ass. And then my manager would come by with like freaking a microscope just inspecting everything.